Even Micheál Martin said wind could potentially be Ireland's oil if we developed it, but we haven't. Web3 gives people back control. So they have control of their own identity, they can have control of their own content, and they can have control of how they interact with the services and the brands that they want to have those interactions with. Just simply moving to digital controls could save between 10 and 30% of lost energy in grid distribution. We're all moving towards digital services and digital economies. We have aging populations where person-to-person services aren't sustainable at the same levels they were previously. More and more and more is being done digitally, and we like it.
Paul, thanks for coming into the studio today.
Thank you.
So you wear kind of multiple hats. Just for our listeners, tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, well, I'm here today primarily wearing two hats. So I'm Executive Director for Blockchain Ireland, which is a technology advocacy group promoting the adoption and awareness of blockchain, crypto and Web3 technologies broadly in Ireland. I won't say my day job because I do them both at the same time, but I also work providing content strategy and services for technology companies. So I spent 20 plus years editing Ireland's IT professional journal, and I've been around tech for a long time. So I work with companies to express the business value of what they do through thought leadership. So I specialize in data infrastructure, cybersecurity, but also do a lot of work around ESG and sustainability.
You're always on.
Indeed.
Always on. I can't think of anything that's moving as fast in the world of just...
It takes a lot to keep up.
Yeah, it's genuinely going so quick. Was there anything that particularly made you lean more into Web3 blockchain that kind of got you hooked on that, where everyone else was more kind of looking from afar or observer?
Well, I've done quite a bit of research through my work around Web3 in particular, and skills and talent development around it. But one of the things that really caught me around it was the recent experience of a lot of people just in using services, particularly say social media is a good example, but not exclusively preserved for that. But people feel a loss of control. They feel like they don't control their interactions. So whether it's advertising or whether it's their content or even their image recently. There was a scandal in the UK where people were being served ads for services on a large social media platform that took other people's images. And these were images that they regarded as not appropriate for that particular use. So people have a general feeling that they're being exploited a bit. Web3 gives people back control. So they have control of their own identity, they can have control of their own content, and they can have control of how they interact with the services and the brands that they want to have those interactions with.
And when you look at, we are going to go to AI and energy in a moment, but when we look at actually blockchain, how have you seen it progress over the last couple of years? What type of use cases give you the most energy in terms of you could see them being scaled across the world?
Blockchain as a system it's essentially a database, but it's distributed and it has a couple of other characteristics that set it apart. So immutability. Once something goes on the blockchain, that's it doesn't change. But there is a consensus mechanism that says before a block is accepted that it has met all the criteria necessary. So that's really powerful. So where you have things where a single reference version of the truth is necessary, then blockchain can be a very good system. Now, it doesn't fit everything, but in public services, it has a lot of usage. So say, for example, land registries in various countries are now going to a blockchain-based system. And it's being very useful, very valuable in that sort of space. It's also being used in things like the pharmaceuticals industry, where there were a lot of paper-based systems for things like supply chain assurance, ingredient assurance, that sort of thing. Blockchain is a very good system for that because it's distributed, it's consensus-based, it has very specific rules. Smart contracts can be very easily built around it to govern its usage as well. So, but there's other things as well. There are European countries that are using it for credentials management. So, say in the medical profession, and in lots of different professions where your credentials for the different qualifications that you have need to follow you around, particularly say within the EU. Blockchain is a perfect system for that as well. But there's other systems as well, or other usages as well, which are a little bit more kind of forward-looking. At the moment, due to the geopolitical situation, there's a lot of problems around GPS spoofing, GPS blocking, things like that. There's various proposals for AI and blockchain together for GPS assurance. So there's myriad use cases out there, entirely divorced from cryptocurrencies and that sort of thing. The business use of blockchain is increasing massively.
When you help an organization with their content, thought leadership piece, the kind of the man behind the man in some regard, is it difficult to understand their audience, get across the right point, you're speaking in their tone? How do you start to finesse all those different types of things? It seems like you're not just writing an article, you're not just writing a white paper, there's so much. What goes into your strategy around something like that?
Well, what you're trying to do is you're trying to capture the value proposition of what's being done. As you characterized earlier, the technology industry is moving so fast, and certain elements of it are moving faster than others. So when somebody comes out with a new proposition, a new service, a new way of doing things, the first thing you have to explain is why. What's it for? What's it going to do? So you have to look at the outcomes. You have to look at the specific value proposition. And you have to work back then to the how to express that. And you have to look at the audience. You have to look at who are you aiming it at. So sometimes you're working on content that is going out to the corporate audience. So it's going to the ecosystem of the company you're working with. So say, for example, if you have a change in ESG policy, if you have a change in, if you're moving from one sustainability framework to another for reporting, why? What's the value in doing that? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to look at what is the value proposition of what's being done, who needs to have that communicated to them, what's their language, how do you make it easy for them to consume, and how do you make it readable, how do you make it consumable? Because at the moment a lot of material is being AI generated, and some of it is appropriate to be AI generated and some of it is not. When you have the big messages, that still needs to come from a person.
Yeah.
And you really need to get some element of that person's expression into it. Yeah. So I work with people to essentially put down tools and templates to allow them to get that information out. And then it can be finessed into the different vehicles and the different audiences necessary.
It's funny, before yourself, Jared Quinn was in from Icon. I just asked him how does he use AI himself day to day, and he was telling me that when he's doing a competitor's report, something that might have taken him 4.5 hours to do, he's getting Gemini's deep research to do in 4 minutes, and he's kind of walking through all that, and he's saying so helpful. But as you rightly said, there's that human element where you're trying to gravitate the user. Is it instinct that's trying to, you kind of knowing where to, what the meat and potatoes is to guide them to say, actually, this is relevant to you, you should read it. Where an AI document like that, is probably not going to have that. Maybe yes, or maybe it does.
AI is particularly good at certain tasks. So information aggregation, pattern analysis and recognition, things like that. So if you have a large amount of data that you need to get through to get specific elements from, it can be extremely good at doing that. So say, for example, in some of the research work I would have done in preparing things like white papers, but also survey-based material. So I tend to work with a lot of other industry associations who would gather a lot of information from an entire sector and present that to its members and constituents. AI is particularly good in doing that, you know. So it has its strengths, but as I said, when you have big messages that need to go across, so communicating strategy, communicating new developments, communicating how you are dealing with the challenges of your sector, of your market, of whatever. So say, for example, as recent changes in attitudes and policies across the water, a lot of European companies have doubled down on their environmental, social and governance commitments. That needs to be expressed. The fact that you're making that stance, why you're making that stance, and why you think that it still serves your customers, your partners, your ecosystem. Those kinds of things need a personal element to them.
Yeah.
It needs to sound like it's coming from the CEO or the CFO or the sustainability officer.
Yeah.
It needs to have an element of their voice, of their expression, of their stamp on it.
So someone that knows AI so well, or you would know reading about it, you're talking about it, you're writing about it, you're hosting events about it, do you have to keep yourself off the sauce? Like how do you manage that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like obviously, I'm an individual. I need to get work done, and of course, I use AI. In research, in particular, it can be good where you have a large amount of documentation to get through, say, source and reference material, things like that, particularly technical information. Being able to parse that quickly and summarize and take key points is absolutely a total game changer in terms of getting through that research, as your last speaker was talking about. So of course, it has to be checked and it has to be referenced and things like that, but it's still a huge head start in getting through what otherwise would have been very, very time consuming and potentially difficult.
It blows my mind that only 5% of our listeners actually subscribe to the podcast. We've got one favour to ask. Please, can you subscribe to the podcast? If you like our content, you subscribing will make a huge difference to the guests that we can get on the show, and also be a voice for AI applied across Ireland, but doing it the right way. Now back to the show. AI, obviously, feels like the most talked about thing in so many different quarters, depending on your kind of your circle. Every different type of business is offering some type of solution on it. But the energy situation around that is very, very topical at the moment. The cost of it, the cost for the environment, being efficient. From a national perspective, it feels like we're probably a couple of years behind, if I'm being nice about it. Where do you kind of see that at the moment? Because it feels like it's a big stone in someone's shoe in terms of the aspirations of the hyperscalers particularly.
Absolutely, and this is something interesting I've come across. I work a lot with data infrastructure companies, and the talk around AI in the public sphere in particular is very much around its impact, its energy consumption, the fact that it's making energy bills higher, things like that. So we're going to kind of flip it slightly and come at it from the perspective of its impact on where it lives, data centers. So instead of talking about the AI function itself, we're going to talk about the workloads and the energy consumption, how it's actually done. But just to kind of to sort of characterize it, if we put it in terms that everyone can understand, we used to talk about energy consumption in terms of the 1 bar electric fire, but nobody has them anymore. So let's talk instead about something that everybody does have, which is a kettle. So your average kettle is generally between about maybe 12 and 1500 watts. So essentially, when you flick the switch, it draws around about that much power, and it's on for a certain length of time to boil, a liter and a half of water. So say, for example, let's take 1500 watts, right? It's probably on the upper end of the average range, but it's a nice round figure. So boiling a kettle for 3 minutes to boil a liter of water, about 1.5 kilowatts. So essentially it's 0.5 hours, 1500 watts. So that comes out at 75 watt hours. Okay, so don't worry too much about it. It's all relative. A Google search, according to a 2023 study by the Electric Power Research Institute, said that your average Google search took about 0.3 watt hours. So kettle took 75 watt hours, 0.3 watt hours for a Google search. Now, another piece of research came out and said that a ChatGPT type search, so an AI assisted search, took 2.9 watt hours. So approximately 10 times the amount of a regular Google search. So 2.9 watts is still fairly small in relation to the 75 watt hours of a kettle. However, there are billions of searches per day. So I'm just referring to figures here just to get it right. So essentially, a 3-minute boil of the kettle is about 26 AI searches.
Yeah.
But if you put that then into context, right, the billions of searches per day, the estimates are that it's about 620 megawatt hours per day for AI searches. So that's about the energy that 26,000 average homes take in a day.
Yeah.
So that just kind of characterizes it. However, if you look at the overall sort of energy consumption, right, as of about 2024, the International Energy Agency reckoned that 1.5% of total global energy consumption was taken up by data centers. So that's in 2024. They reckoned that that was a 12% year-on-year increase for the previous 5 years.
Yeah.
That's in energy consumption. But if you look at the 5 years from, say, 2019 to 2024, if you look at the increase in digital capacity, that is the amount of data center space and service that comes from that. It's many multiples. So it has stayed, the actual overall energy consumption has stayed at a very stable climb, despite many orders of magnitude of digital capacity for everything from public services to public health to social media to AI. So that's just a kind of a wrapper around this of the fact that AI absolutely is driving energy consumption. There's no doubt about it. But in the overall terms, it's still relatively small and it's quite predictable.
Yeah.
But just one other point then as well, that the actual support in terms of data centers, the change that we're seeing there to accommodate AI is very much around energy as well. So equipment density, first of all, the fact that the machines themselves are simply getting bigger and heavier. So that has an impact in terms of just being able to hold the damn things up. Yeah. So racks are getting bigger and stronger to cope with it. The raised floor systems that a lot of data centers use are having to be reinforced, things like that. But then there's the actual energy density. And again, just to try and characterize it, in 2024, there was a survey from an industry body that said average energy density per rack was about 12 kilowatts. When you start talking about AI, that immediately jumps to about 30 kilowatts. 75 kilowatts is not that unusual. NVIDIA have a roadmap for 2027 where there's a system called Rubin Ultra that could potentially take 600 kilowatts per rack. So if you think about that in terms of data center infrastructure, That's a massive challenge to try and meet. So data center design, data center operation, and data center management in particular has gone through huge changes in a very, very short space of time to cope with all of that.
Yeah, and it's not going to change anytime soon.
No.
Sarah Fryer, CFO of OpenAI, she was in Ireland a couple of weeks, because started summer now. It's actually from Ireland. She told me 1 billion users, ChatGPT now, 700 million active users. We're all kind of going towards that kind of digital. All the countries are putting down their hat for that kind of digital environment. So it's just going to scale and scale and scale.
Absolutely.
I suppose the question starts to be is, how do we make sure, from an Irish perspective, that we're putting ourselves front and forward to say, we've got this, come here, you can do it here, the jobs of the future are now, we can do that, because the rhetoric can be one thing, but actually when they look at the infrastructure, compared to like a Finland, Norway, places like that, it feels like we're missing something.
Ireland has had a policy for more than 20 years now of attracting and bringing in investment and infrastructure from technology companies. What we haven't been doing is developing the infrastructure to support them. So we all know about the housing crisis that's going on at the moment, which is affecting all elements of the community. But one of the other things is that as we keep hearing about how data centers are gobbling all the energy, but it's a little bit of an unfair accusation, because when a new factory comes online, when a new hospital comes online, when any large consumer comes online, we don't say, well, what's that going to do to the energy supply? The problem with data centers in particular, and AI as well, because it has such an accelerative effect on it, is that people don't necessarily see the value of what data centers do in the modern environment. The old thing is that, a factory gate, you saw 1,000 people go in of a morning and 1,000 people come out of an evening. You don't see the same with a data center. But a data center could be thought of similar to a modern industrial estate. Yeah. It's where businesses live. We're all moving towards digital services and digital economies. We have aging populations where person-to-person services aren't sustainable at the same levels they were previously. More and more and more is being done digitally, and we like it. Revenue online, motor tax online, your dog license online, all these things, we love these things because we can do it ourselves and we can do it when we want, and it's on demand. So more and more is being done digitally because A, it works, it's efficient, and we want it. So in the same way, everybody's favorite services live in a data center, whether it's your streaming service or your social media, your music, your whatever, these things live online. And so what we need to do is make sure that as we develop in that way, that we develop commensurately with the infrastructure that's needed. There has been chronic underinvestment in the energy grid here to support all of that.
It feels like there's an education gap for the rest of the country that just doesn't see that.
Well, that is part of the problem, absolutely. The public perception is not informed as to the value of these things. So, say for example, there are massive data center infrastructure all around the city, but nobody knows who they are or what they do. And, you could easily just have a banner on the side of the building going, digital services live here, and whatever you want beyond that, So it's there is absolutely a perception there. But the point is, it doesn't have to be that way. Ireland, as we have seen, even Micheál Martin said wind could potentially be Ireland's oil if we developed it, but we haven't. We haven't moved fast enough for these things. We have done things like there's the new interconnect, electrical interconnect that's going into France pretty soon, which will give us access to things like French nuclear power. And nuclear power is very much having a renaissance at the moment because it's overall low carbon. Now, obviously there's swings and roundabouts there in terms of its impact, but there's a whole new generation of nuclear development as well, and even things like small modular reactors, which will be essentially, some of them are potentially mobile, others will be fixed, and they're going to be used by large energy consumers like data centers, but not exclusively, as their core generation, so that they can power themselves in a low carbon or no carbon way that allows them to do what they need to do. They can be resilient, but they can also provide services to national grids. So one of the big things that's happening at the moment is as more and more renewable energy sources come online, one of the problems is variability. So as everyone says, the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow. That's fine. That's taken into account. What you have is when the wind is blowing hard, but not all the energy is being used, you have storage systems. So you have things like battery energy storage systems, you have storage networks, but large energy consumers have what they call critical power infrastructure. So you have these uninterruptible power supplies in data centers, but also in big factories, in any kind of critical power situation. Now they can be smart and they can have two-way controls. So essentially, a big data center could potentially store a lot of public energy that's generated by public, say, wind or photovoltaic or geothermal or hydro, and then feed that back to the grid when it's necessary. That is capacity that national grids would have to build anyway. So if it can be done through public-private partnerships, then there's a benefit there as well. So a lot of large energy consumers are organizing themselves now technically on what's called a microgrid infrastructure. So essentially it works like a self-contained energy grid. They have some kind of power generation capability. They can distribute it throughout, say, maybe a campus of 5 or 6 facilities, but it also is connected to a national or a regional grid. And what it can do is it can provide those two-way flows. So large energy consumers are turning into what's called prosumers. So they're producers and consumers. So they can provide balancing services to the grids to help bring on more renewable energy faster. But they can also do things like load shedding. So say, for example, if a national grid is coming under stress due to demand, then they can say, well, okay, we will reduce our consumption or eliminate it completely from the grid, and we'll work independently until the stress situation is gone.
We can all play a part in that. You could have your solar panels on your roof.
Exactly.
You can be managing it. You can look it on the app, and you can kind of get quite into it as well. You're getting kind of money back. So I think and I think off the air you gave the good example of the tracker. What is a tracker mortgage kind of example too, right? So you're kind of meeting people where they're at and giving them novice examples to kind of go on their journey, rather than you kind of get this kind of far-flung image and you actually bring the kind of granular day-to-day. It becomes so much more accessible.
Absolutely. And the thing is that, again, digitalization broadly is going through every aspect of modern life, modern culture, modern everything. The digitalization of energy grids in particular is where tools like AI can be brought in the management and orchestration of those systems. So essentially, if you have a series of microgrids in a geographical area, and then you have a national grid that wraps all around them, AI will be a critical tool in managing those to make sure that the flows are safe, first of all, they're resilient, they're reliable, and that they all work together. So the orchestration element of that is going to be huge. And again, the IEA have said that digitalization alone, just simply moving to digital controls, could save between 10 and 30% of lost energy in grid distribution.
That just sounds unrealistic.
So
it's
like
crazy when you think about that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is happening everywhere. So essentially, AI as a workload is progressing, as you've said, billions of users. But AI as a tool to manage energy to manage optimization, to manage monitoring and control is going to be huge as well. So say, for example, one of the key enabling technologies of AI in the first place, we talked about the energy density, the huge amount of energy that's being drawn per rack, per row, per facility. One of the things that's enabling that is liquid cooling. So essentially, old air cooling tends to top out at around 30 kilowatts energy draw per rack. So what's needed is more direct, more specific, more controllable cooling. And hybrid and liquid cooling is where that's going. So essentially what happens is a metal plate that has a circuit inside it sits on top of a key component, like a CPU, a GPU, a chipset, whatever. And a liquid medium circulates through that, and it draws the heat away. So the metal-to-metal contact is the first interface, attracting the heat, and then the heat itself is taken away by a liquid medium. So that can be taken out to a coolant distribution unit, and then essentially you now have a resource. So first of all, it's a closed system, so it can be more directed, it can be more targeted, more specific. Secondly, you have a closed system whereby instrumentation is more effective, so that you can put sensors in there to know exactly what's happening. But also, you have a medium that is now taking heat away that can be reused for other things. So we already have, in Ireland, we have examples of district heating systems that are taking heat from data centres. In the UK, there's examples of things like public swimming pools being heated from these. There was an example in New Zealand of a lagoon pool for surfers being heated from a nearby data centre. So heat reuse is coming in as well, and that helps the overall efficiency of it. But the other thing is then the instrumentation level means that you can have AI managing the cooling itself, so it can be load adaptive, so that essentially the energy being drawn by the cooling is only ever commensurate to the load that it's experiencing in the first place. So the classic example was as far back as 2016, Google was using its DeepMind AI, and they reckon they achieved a 40% saving in the energy consumption of the cooling when AI managed it.
Yeah, which is just incredible when you think of that number, like 40%.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah.
So there's a number of different aspects to this, and it's not something that is immediately obvious when people hear, energy consumption from AI is going this way. It is absolutely. There's no getting away from it. But the other benefits that come around from this, AI technology, simply because of its requirements, have meant that the infrastructure to supply it has never been more manageable and optimizable than before.
Yeah, and I feel that as a government, having different private and public coming together to go, okay, we need this solution. We need to be forward planning. This isn't going away, and we need to actually start to think about this in a cohesive way. It's just moving so quickly, right? And there's all these different types of options coming up as well. We're trying to reimagine what the art of the possible is with it. We could talk about this forever. Paul, how can people find out more about you, I suppose, wearing both hats?
First of all, for Blockchain Ireland, it's blockchainireland.ie. We do a regular newsletter, so people can come and sign up specifically for that, just to hear what we're doing. We run, we have regular events and meetups. We have a number of different working groups that concentrate on different areas. So we have legal and regulatory, we have technology, we have enterprise, education, and we have events and comms. So depending on your interest level, you can subscribe to that. We have a LinkedIn page and a large following there, and we put out as much information as we can that way. So with my other hat then, PJH Consulting, and that's pjhconsulting.ie, and I can work with companies or agencies there depending on what the need is. And again, do everything from content strategy to delivery services, thought leadership, blogging, interactions, conference speaking, all those kinds of things, working with people to get their knowledge and expertise in the right vehicle and on the right platform.
Paul, thank you very much for your time today. Really, really insightful.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
At AI Ireland, we're helping over 1 million people become literate using artificial intelligence. And we do this in a variety of different ways. The easiest way is our AI literacy program, where we do a 60 to 90 minute program via virtual Zoom or Microsoft Teams, where we teach the rules of the road of AI, from basic business concepts to ethical and resourceful decisions on how you actually use AI every day. This is our literacy foundation. The second way we use AI training is within our workshops. These are either virtual or in-person workshops where executive leaders come and use some of the AI tools that we make available for them, that they can actually start to take their own documents and reimagine savings of time and energy, but taking away friction from the work that they do each day. Later on, we actually empower different departments, HR, finance, sales, marketing, operations, and start to utilize AI across relevant use cases to upskill their different types of departments. If you're interested and ready to go on your AI journey, we'll be able to showcase over 700 applications of applied AI about how you can actually stop reinventing the wheel and start using AI for your organization today. If you want to start out and find out a little bit about the golden thread of activities that we've got to allow you to start to utilize AI straight away, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll give you a good comprehensive overview about the arts of the possible, minus the hype, purely applied. See you then.